That looks to be up. All right. Well, my name is James Smith. Thank you for coming to my presentation today. Thank you for giving some consideration to the ideas I want to share with you today. I'm from Los Angeles. I work at LA Care, where I run their websites. I used to work at an agency where I built their websites, and then they gave me a call and said, hey, if you're not busy, and you remember the bodies are buried, it'd be great to come give us a hand. I said, sure. So I've did this on both sides. After camp, and after being at an agency for a while and seeing many failures, come on, we're good. Seeing many failures, come on. I saw a need for a conversation about communications. I work currently in the communication department, which manages our messaging, so it's a bit of an irony. But I also got turned on to communication skills as an undergraduate with a professor who absolutely blew my mind. He started telling us things the first day of class. I said, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that. By the end of the semester, I was an absolute convert. And I've been practicing and studying the things he taught me ever since and trying to get better at it. It's taken a while. So those are some of the tools I want to share with you guys. And it's been a passion of mine my whole life to continue to get better at these things and study them. And seeing a need for a conversation about conversations and understanding each other to make the workflow better and easier is why I developed this talk. Any questions so far? Great, let's get started. So this is what I'm going to cover for you. I call it 4 hacks for the communication process. And these are going to be 4 essential tools that I want to be easy enough to keep in your mind. And through the presentation, these are the 4 things we're going to go through. The transactional model of communication, and understanding the best environment for communication, understanding conflict so you can recognize it, and understanding the ABCs of emotion and noise. So that's where I'm going to take you. But first, I've got to give you a little bit of a presentation, and I'm going to give you some background. What I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be giving you very abstract models. I'm going to try and connect that to very concrete examples, the best I can from my own work, from things that we do in development, either as a project manager or developers. So quick show of hands. How many people are project managers in the room? Okay, 2 developers. Is that front end, back end? Both?
Doing it all.
Okay. Designers?
Yeah.
Content strategy? UX?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, these are great people to have the conversation with. So, these are some of the knowledge needs I want to walk you through to support the hacks I'm going to give you. I'm going to do this a little bit quickly at the beginning. So, one of the things I'm going to walk you through right away is this criticism anger cycle and how to go from angry to calm, and keeping that tool in mind and understanding what is happening when you're seeing this behavior. Also, I want to stress the idea, come on in, it's okay, of building value with every communication contact you have. Because what you're going to do, you're in a new relationship with a new client, potentially. Old clients are established and you've got a good relationship. Sooner or later, you're going to have a miscommunication. It's going to happen. The nature of communication itself, the abstractions, the difficulties in communication mean sooner or later you're just going to misunderstand each other. And when money's involved and contracts are involved, people get very entitled and they get a big attitude and they get very emotional about that. So they get very entrenched in their point of view and their demand. Everyone's going to be emotional. Emotions are part of every conversation to some degree. I'll touch on that some more in a minute. But build value with every contact because there's going to be a moment when you're going to need that value. It's going to take a hit. So you want to build every chance you have a contact, earn a penny, earn some goodwill in some way, and practice these skills in small ways. It's not the big decisions. It's every small one you make that add up to make an ocean, to make a Grand Canyon. This is what I'm describing. A friend of mine, Glenn Hilton at ImageX development shop out of Vancouver, Canada, he describes this as winning chit. Think of it as a poker game because you've got to build an account that is going to take a hit. You know it's going to happen sooner or later. And it may even take small nibbles. I'll cover that in a moment too. The professor I studied under originally described this exactly the same way. Build confidence with every transaction because you're going to need that. you're going to get back. What he called this was an idiosyncrasy account. This is the first model I'm going to give you. With your family and friends, you have an idiosyncrasy account. Them to you and you to them. Each of you give each other credits and debits based on your understanding of your unique behavior. When that comes down to 0, family you're related to, they will give you credit for a while past the 0 level. Friends a little less, first date very less. Business relationship, almost none. But that's why you want that idiosyncrasy account to be building value or rebuilding the value that's lost. So think of that every time you have a touch point, build that confidence. Next thing I'm going to take you through is an understanding of relational decay and growth. So you see what that confidence gets you, and a hierarchy of emotional well-being, of emotional state. So here's that point where we're looking at the anger cycle. Before you can use the hacks I'm going to give you to manage the communication and understand the broadest general strategy, you've got to get through that moment where the client is screaming in your face, frothing at the mouth, just absolutely rabid. That person in front of you cannot think about anything except how seethingly angry they are at you or your company or what you've done. Whatever it is, you are now the point of their focus, and they cannot think. Before you can use these hacks, you have to walk them off the cliff and get your back off of the wall.
We can't.
You've got to make some room. Sometimes you can. And there are sessions about those clients too. I recommend them. Yeah, the industry has done a good job of saying, this is not a good relationship. We're going to say thank you, but no. And I do recommend that as well. And I'm going to cover some of that too. So here's what's going to happen. Someone's giving you a lot of verbal criticism, and this usually attacks our self-image or our public image, and we want to respond personally. They're doing the same thing. They're having this moment. Something is confronting their self-image or their public image. So their self-image says, I get things done, I'm on top of things, I make my boss happy, and this is not going to make them happy when I have to tell them we're late or the budget, whatever the bad news is. That's where they are. There are only 4 possible responses. You can withdraw, which achieves nothing. You can rationalize in response, which only annoys the person you're talking to, because you just told them, here's why what you just told me is not important. You've rationalized it. You're going to make them more angry. You can counterattack. Well, here's why what you did was wrong and what I did was not wrong. That's going to make them more angry. The only response that will get you through that moment is to listen calmly, very calmly, sincerely. And there's a second step. You have to agree to the truth. When they say, you're late, you told me this, you say, yes, I gave you an expectation I have not met. And now, they step back and go, okay, they've owned it, they've acknowledged it. They're a little, one step back from that cliff edge. Agree to the problem. Agree to talk with them. And mostly what you're going to do by talking with them is listen. You've got to get through both of these intersections. You only have 4 choices for your basic response. Choose to listen calmly, because that opens the space for the person in front of you to not continue to melt down. Then agree to truth, agree to listen and talk, and give that confidence. What you want in this moment is to convey to the person in front of you, I will listen to your problem, I will take it seriously, but you do not want to sit there and be the victim of abuse. You can use things like sort of call attention to behaviors. Like, we're all professionals here. Can we bring the tone down a little bit? I would really appreciate that. And using an iMessage like that is one of the hacks. Because they'll hear that and go, okay, I can agree with that. That's what you want to do. So you've got to survive this talk, remain calm, and remember, the person in front of you, their anger, their venting, it's not about you. They're dealing with their own images of the problem that have everything to do with the relationship of themselves to the problem. I'll cover that in a minute too. Show you're listening, show respect, sincerely. Don't manipulate, don't obfuscate, don't give secrets. Because all those things people sense, they realize it. You know when you're talking to Eddie Haskell, do you miss this thing? Your hair looks so wonderful today. You get it. No one likes to be sold or manipulated. Relationship decay or growth. Now that you've taken a step back from the edge of the cliff, this is the gradient. that you're on with your client, with your team. These tools are not just for business. These are for every communication event in your life. Because interpersonal communication doesn't stop at just business or at home. It's everywhere. So this is the way to the top. This is the way to the bottom. When you see these behaviors in your own mind, flag them. Realize, I'm on a negative path. I have to stop. When you hear the language from your team, oh my God, this work would be so much easier if the clients weren't so annoying. Where is that? That's contempt. You've got to stop that. Tell your teams, do you realize clients keep the lights on and pay your salary to keep the lights on for you at home? I don't want to hear them talking anymore. Really quash it. Because if you don't, this subculture develops and becomes us versus them. And the result of that is we're not listening. And then none of these tools will be of any value at all. So watch these things. If you are focusing only on the negatives without a balance, first step down. If you're only reactive, not listening, second. And then so forth. Still only is usually easy to recognize. Make a mental note to be aware of these things in your own behavior, observe them in other people's behavior, and put a stop to them. Make yourself stop. Good way to make yourself stop is get on the top. Move up here. Know your client, know how they see the world. So you know how to talk to them. Responding to cues in a relationship, that means when your partner reaches out to hold your hand or leans in for a kiss, you're aware of that body language communication. They haven't verbally said anything to you, but they're asking for a response, an acknowledgement. You want to do something similar with a client, but I wouldn't suggest hand-holding and kissing. Find the appropriate response. They're looking for approval or connection. You can offer them approval and connection. If somebody one of your clients is like, oh, somebody on the team is having a baby, offer to send a shower gift. Show approval, appreciation. If you know your client, little things. Again, this is how you win that penny, how you win that chip with every contact. This is what you're doing. Showing admiration and appreciation. If you know your client, you know how they see the world. You can say, wow, I saw that product launch you guys did that's separate from what I'm working on. That was really impressive. And let me take a moment here to describe what I just said. That's one of the hacks as well. I like blah, blah, blah. Instead of, gee, Mrs. Tigger, your hair looks really nice today. You don't say, you look great, or you blah, blah, blah. You say, I like that about you. And that's a very different message. It comes through a different neural path. The person listening realizes you're not manipulating me, you're talking about your point of view. If you start practicing looking around at the people around you, clients, friends, anybody, and think of the things you like. And just let that say, I like that color. And you can just accept, I like that. And when you express that, that's showing appreciation. You start getting off of the decay and into the growth. And it's a useful skill. It also sounds more sincere. What's going to happen with your client, with any relationship, they're going to move up and down this hierarchy as you work on that growth or decay. Here in the middle, we're neutral. And as we get to the top and to the bottom, we're in good states and bad states. And they increase by degree. One is intellectual, then emotional, then visual, physical. So this client who absolutely hates you, that's visceral. That's serious relationship decay. This client that has embraced you intellectually and emotionally, loves you. They are telling 20 other friends, 20 other businesses about you and how great you are and how you should give them a call and hire them right now. That's what you want. When someone has gotten to this point, this visceral hate, you cannot communicate. And that's when you need that tool of, we don't have common ground to communicate here. We're not going to make any progress. I don't know what to do, but I at least like your taste in cars. And see that smile on your face? You feel that? That's impossible to resist. You have found that one point that has nothing to do with the problem that you can show appreciation. And when you do that and that's received, you can't stay in that bottom. You can't stay in visceral hate anymore. You've just been kicked out of it. And now you've created space to start building a way back to a relationship where you can discuss the problem and start looking at, well, what else do we have in common? Okay, maybe you're okay I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I've been upset. Let's try what's the problem. But you've got to get them out of that position to communicate. And that I message, I like this, I appreciate that, makes it impossible to stay there. If it's received, if it's perceived as sincere and authentic. That's why you want to practice that. It's really simple. A lot of these tools that really blew my mind are incredibly simple, which is why I said, really? No way. And I tried them. And they worked. And they weren't hard to use. And they weren't hard to remember. And it was true that communication was a skill that I could build. And there are still plenty of times I fail. Don't let the fact that I'm standing here just giving you this presentation give the impression that I'm some guru. I'm not. I fail at these things all the time, which is how I have the examples to give you. So this is the hierarchy of emotional being. Neutrality is fine. You want to push people to the top. Remember, you got to get them off that bottom rung. 3 good keys to help. Show gratitude, show appreciation, show acknowledgement. When you have a problem, acknowledge the problem. Acknowledge the person in front of you. I hear you telling me you're upset. I'm going to listen to that. I take that very seriously. 3 magic words that help the conversation. Tell me more. When someone says, blah, 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 it's like, very interesting you should say that. Tell me more about that. You don't necessarily fully understand what they're upset about fully. Very much like in sales, and salespeople, they tell you, get past the first objection to the real objection. So when someone is ranting at you, that's not the real problem. All they're doing is giving you a clear message that emotionally, I am really upset. That's great. There's nothing I can do to solve that. Get to the real problem. Tell me more. And then really listen. Can anyone think of another way to say that same phrase? Yeah, didn't know there was going to be a pop quiz. Should have warned you.
I hate this phrase, but when people say, let's unpack that. Like,
that's manipulative. I hear that.
I hate that phrase, though. That's,
I would recommend simply changing the language of that to an I message. I would like to unpack that with you, please. Now you're inviting someone to work with you. You're owning yourself. You're giving them an I message. Avoiding the use of the word you is one of the primary hacks, because that always brings up ego and defensiveness in your listener. And someone who's already pissed at you, as soon as they hear that, it's like, yeah, they're letting me, blah, 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 I find this. And you're not conning me, you're not snubbing me. So say, I would like this. I would like to achieve a solution. I would like to work something better. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Now we're ready. This is the last thing before our hacks. I need to give you these principles, because these describe and govern everything else. You must remember these 3 things, and if you do, the rest of it kind of is derived from these 3 principles. First, the responsibility for communication, for successfully communicating a message, is on you as the speaker, because you are the only one who knows what you mean. Which also means, when you ask the question, do you understand? That's a meaningless question. Because the person in front of you could say, yes? How do they know? That answer doesn't help you. You haven't got any new data. You haven't confirmed that they do in fact understand the instruction or the point you talked about. It's really hard to stop asking that question. I still do it. And it's like, dang it, did it again. Ask them to explain it. Ask for feedback. You want to make sure they understand your meaning. And you're the only one who knows what that is. Here's another thing about that. If you don't make sure the person you're talking to or negotiating with or having a transaction with understands your meaning, you're going to be the one with the problem, not them. When you go to McDonald's and you say, I'm allergic to fish, so I just need a cheeseburger, please. And the teenager working the counter says, here you go, or the drive-thru, tosses you your bag, and you walk out the door and you realize, dang it, he handed me fish. That stupid teenager, he wasn't listening. Nope, he wasn't. Who has the problem? You have a handful of food you can't eat. Who's responsible for making sure they didn't have that problem? The teenager who works there? Technically, sure. But at the end of the day, who walked away with the problem they still have to solve? If you had just taken a little mindfulness to go, okay, let me make sure this message is understood. Now, granted, that's an extreme example and totally unfair, but I want them to be illustrated and easy to remember. Second principle. Okay, well, I'm not on the first one, sorry. Because the responsibility is on you as the speaker to make sure your message is understood, that means the responsibility is also yours to bridge the gap between your level of skill as a communicator and your listeners. And recognize that gap, which brings us to number 2. When you cannot bridge that gap, stop. It's just going to get worse. Learn to recognize when you cannot communicate and stop. Simple examples of this are, if I speak Spanish only and you speak English only, we're reduced to body language and tone to communicate. And if we're trying to, as you guys are dealing with the science presentation, that's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to describe derivatives and complicated math with body language and tone alone. So we can't communicate on the one topic we're trying to be clear on. You can change to a different topic and see if you can communicate about that. You can always go back to, well, at least I like your car. That may still be successful. But recognize when you can't communicate, stop. And these tools I'm giving you, and these understandings and these principles, do not guarantee you will get what you want. Do not guarantee you get what you want. Only that you will be clear and understanding the nature of what's happened, what you want, what they want, what's working, what's not working. Which brings us right back into the usual agile, what's working, what's not, what to work on next. Rinse, repeat. What's working, what's not, what to work on next. When you can't communicate, stop. Realize you will get clarity through these tools, not guarantees of exactly what you want. Accepting that is very helpful as well. So now, with those things in mind, I present to you hack number 1. And I touched something. Does anyone know what I'm supposed to do here?
Touch that screen right there.
Thank you. The communication process. Here we go. There are several diagrams. This is my favorite. Some people call this the send message, receive, decode, but I don't think that's sufficient because of these 2 circles. I'm going to get to that right away. Notice what happens. When I'm communicating from me to you, I have to get an idea that's here to there. I don't think necessarily in language first, because when you look at an infant who doesn't know language, they're clearly thinking, aren't they? I'm going to take an idea and I'm going to put it into the code of the language I know. And in between that gap, that's a spot where noise can creep in. That noise is in my own head. It means I chose a word usage that's odd or rare or irregular or wrong. But I've encoded it, and there's another space for this noise, and I've now communicated it through a channel. That channel can be the air between us and your ears. It can be electronic for an email. It can be electronic for a phone. That channel itself can produce noise. When I'm talking to you like this, the noise outside the room affects how easily you can hear me. When you're on the phone, do you get a good reception? Does your call drop? Things like that. So then, another spot for noise as it's decoded and back into an idea. So when I say, I want that to be blue, well, there's a blue, 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 there's a blue. Which blue? I wasn't specific. But there wasn't a feedback moment where that was caught. And someone said, yeah, I understand you. And they're doing royal blue, and I wanted baby blue. Simple miscommunication through noise. And that noise was in my head and your head. 5 places for that noise. This feedback loop is how you help tune some of that out. So what this means for you is be aware of giving good feedback. Think of your expression, physical, to the person you're talking to. Can you give them a cue that you don't understand what they're saying by giving them a face, tilting your head like a dog? Or do you have to speak up and say so? You're still not there. If you start to be aware of the fact that, okay, I've made an assumption about my understanding of what you mean. When I realize I've done that, now I'm going to say, I think you mean this. Is that what you're trying to say? Is that understanding correct? Am I on the right path? Have I decoded your message correctly? Get active feedback. Ask for active feedback. Now, these two circles, called a frame of reference. This is everything in your life. Your language, where you grew up, your culture, your sex, male, female, your sexual orientation, the communities you socialize in. What does it mean to have common usage of a certain word? All of that creates a context for you through which you perceive the world. And in terms of brain hacks, this is where it gets really, really twisted. Left brain handles language, right brain does not. Experiments have shown with certain people where they separate the brain. They cut the corpus callosum, or some people who are born with a birth defect and don't have it. And they run experiments where they show things that only one side of the brain sees, and then they'll ask the part of the brain that has no language, what'd you see? I don't know. Well, they put a pen in the hand controlled by the part of the brain that does not have language, and they can draw you a picture of it, and then they can say it. What's really crazy, they'll show two different pictures to these subjects and say, okay, draw me what you saw. And the left hand draws one thing. And they say, now give the pen to your right hand and finish the drawing. And the right hand will change the drawing into what it saw and combine the two. And then it gets really twisted. They say, why did you do that? And the subjects will give you a perfectly coherent answer to them. Because the brain is constantly using that frame. It always runs. It is always deciding what is the narrative that explains the data and how I feel and the data coming in. So there's data here from the body. This is how I feel. There's data from outside. And it's constantly explaining that. They will tell you a story about, well, I thought this, and then I thought this, and that's why I drew it that way. Two completely different things. And the story they're making can sound a little nutty, and you think, well, this person's making it up. But subject after subject after subject does this exactly the same way. Your brain's constantly using that frame to interpret the world around you. And it may be wrong, which is where you get those moments of, like, you react. Well, was your reaction proportionate? Was it accurate to what actually happened? That's why being aware of this frame is important. The ability to have a conversation means those frames have to overlap. We both have to speak English. If we're going to talk about science and math to that degree, there's a great scene in the Star Trek movie, Star Trek V, where Dr. McCoy walks up to Mr. Spock and says, well, Spock, oh, doctor, we just brought you back from the dead. What was it like? And Spock gives him another classic zinger. He says, well, doctor, without a common frame of reference, it would be impossible to have a conversation. In which McCoy says, oh, dang it, he did it again. But he's right. There's a great book, Flatland. Anyone know this book? Carl Sagan does a fantastic explanation of it. I recommend it. Look on YouTube. It says, in a two-dimensional world, if I take you out and show you a three-dimensional world and send you back, your friends go, oh my gosh, where have you been? Well, I've just been in this place called Up. All of your friends will look at you like you're crazy. You go, what's that? There's no common frame of reference. That's what it means to recognize when you cannot communicate. Stop. Understand that frame of reference and with relationship to your client and build those overlaps. That's what that relationship building is about. How many people would be surprised at seeing these numbers? If I'm talking to you about my feelings and emotions, these numbers are exactly what the research has shown. This is not true of all communication events, which has been popularly said, and I have said it, and I had to go back and go, wow, I was wrong. This was done by research out of UCLA in '72, and these numbers were picked up and have been popularized. So you will hear a lot of people say, yeah, only 7% of the message is the words used. More than half is body language and the rest is tone. If that's true, then I could sit in any engineering class in any college in the country with my ears closed, with my eyes closed, and through the tone alone, I can understand 40% nearly of that explanation. Anybody believe that? No. In that kind of conversation, when you're talking about something that distilled, this is not true. But what this is true about is the congruence between emotion and physical language and tone. When we observe that someone says, "I'm fine," we don't believe it because the cues don't match. This means be consistent in your cues and observe the cues of the person you're talking to and the client you're talking to. The cues, the physical and the tone, are probably going to tell you the truth more than the words. And if you're making an assumption, you're not sure, say, "I'm noticing this. Am I right? Is there something else going on? I'm concerned." Bring it to the level of conversation in the present tense. So the other thing is, because that frame, that perception is constantly running, it will hit a landmine that has something to do with you personally. I was terrified of dogs as a child. I was scared by a car. Something. And that moment will come up in a conversation in an event, and you will be triggered, or they will be triggered. And then their tone will change, and you'll perceive it. You may be talking about engineering and math. Very straightforward. There's something now else. These things cannot be turned off. So this is relevant to every conversation, even if you're not just talking about feelings and emotions, because they still come into every conversation, potentially and at unexpected times. So keep this in mind still. What this suggests, by the way, is that your best communication is going to be face-to-face, where you can observe body language, you can give tone, you can observe tone. So if communication is starting to fail or get worse, get off the email, get off the phone, get in person, get on video chat. Start increasing the richness of the communication to increase the amount of data you have to work with. Go, oh, okay, I'm observing this and this and this. Bring it into the conversations. Are you okay today? Or are you happy with my work, not happy with my work? There's something inconsistent here that I'm concerned about. Hack number 3. The origin of conflict itself. Very simple model. When expectations match reality, we don't have a conflict. When reality exceeds our expectations, we're very happy. We don't have conflict. When reality does not meet our expectations, we have conflict. The simplest way to model this and study this, driving around in your car, you get road rage or yell at the person in front of you. Why? Because they have not met your expectations. They've just done something slightly out of the pattern that you expect for drivers. They moved from the left lane across you to make a right turn, suddenly crossing 3 lanes. Reality didn't match your expectations. They didn't follow the normal rules. That's the most basic example and model of conflict. So when you're in that moment, ask yourself, what did this person expect? What was reality? What was the gap? Can I manage that gap? How early can I manage that gap? And what can I do now? A great example, again, waiting tables at college. When I took an order from the table, ran to the kitchen, I'm like, oh, dang it, they're out of that. Instead of just saying, well, give me this instead, and bring it to the table, we were out of chicken, so I brought you a cheeseburger. Here you go. Don't do that. As soon as you know you cannot meet expectations, go back with that message and adjust those expectations immediately. I just took your order 30 seconds ago, and I found out we're actually out of that. I'm very sorry. Most customers understand that, especially in that time frame. But if you walk up and say, here's everyone's food, and you didn't get what you want, sorry, thanks, bye. You have just really upset someone and thrown them under the bus in your relationship under the bus and communicated that you don't really care. Manage expectations. Manage that gap. Be aware of it. So as all the project managers in the room, and all the people reporting to a project manager, I promise you this delivery, I'm not going to meet that. As soon as you know that, say so. That hack is really simple. But I want to show you what conflict is going to look like. Have we seen these before? These are the 6 primary emotive states for human beings. And these faces you see are caricatures of the exact same physical facial expressions that every human being, every ape, every primate on the planet makes in expressing these emotions. Every primate on the planet, you're wired this way, that far back. Because before we had language, we had this. That's why the 55-38-7 is real. We communicated visually, instinctively, for a long time before we communicated with this refined abstraction of language. So as you look at these 6 emotive states, any emotion specifically you can name will probably fall under one of these 6 states. There's a 7th, disgust, which kind of falls by itself. There are several minor ones that are very unique. The movie Inside Out, we have 4 or 5 characters Inside Out. It's working on this theory and this design model. So my vocabulary also dictates how I can experience these emotions. So most people, if I ask you to say ashamed, how many words can you think of for ashamed? I get about 2, maybe 3. I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed, kind of red in the face. Sheepish, there's 4. Well, when I get to mad, oh man, I got a big vocabulary for mad. I'm pissed, I'm peeved, I'm annoyed, I'm irritated, I'm angry, I'm seething, I'm just, yeah. So my ability to experience that on the gradient, much richer. That isn't a good thing. But we all have that, and that's a very common statistic. So let me walk you into something else right here real quick. I'm describing emotions. What's the difference between a feeling and an emotion? I can feel myself poking myself in the leg. I can feel my finger. Feelings are physical. Now, the continued poking may get annoying. Annoying is an abstract word that I assign to irritation. So that's the difference. One's physical, one's an emotion that we assign this abstract word to. In the movie The Matrix, there's a great scene where someone says, "Oh, Neo, can you tell me what love is? Is it love? No, love is a word." Yes, it is a word. It's assigned to the description of that physical feeling. And here's what happens. You have a feedback loop. Your body, your brain, your body. Which one's bigger? Be aware of this. You're going to hit a feeling because you're going to react to something. And you go, I don't like that. And the brain goes, oh, message got. We don't like that. And sends a message back to the body, which now starts producing the I don't like that chemistry, which starts feeding the brain. And the brain says, okay, now we're going to act that way. You can separate those two things. You say, okay, I do feel annoyed. I do feel anxious. But I'm not going to act that way. I'm not going to let it show. Talk to people with social anxiety disorder, they'll tell you about not letting it show. They're experiencing extreme physical feelings and the emotions that go with it. But they don't necessarily want you to know until they get out of the room. They might tell you privately. You can use that skill, that exact same hack, for other things to separate those moments. A good way to study this, if you have children or can observe children, look at these. Happy, sad, mad, afraid, ashamed, confused. Think of the energy. Happy comes out. Sad, energy comes in. Mad, energy comes out. Afraid, energy comes in. Ashamed, energy comes in. Confused, energy comes in. Children do not have a fully developed brain. They do not have fully developed emotional control or experience. And they may be acting out and act mad, but they're not mad. They're simply overwhelmed. They may be sad, afraid, ashamed, and confused. In. It's too much. Something has to get. And they have a meltdown. Watch this. Children are a wonderful laboratory for observing these data points and these models, seeing them in action, seeing how they change. So when you see that, you're trying to understand the conflict, manage the gap. What are the emotions you're being dealt with? Okay, happy is not an emotion I have to solve. Sad is not usually something you can solve. I'm sad because of the death of the family. Nothing you can do about that. You say, I'm sad because I'm not going to meet my deadline. And you've acknowledged the fact that, yes, we're not going to deliver on time. That's not how you're going to be able to fix that. Giving some confidence may mitigate it, but it won't fix it. Mad, you got to walk them off the cliff and make sure, get them back to being rational. Afraid, that's something I can solve. Afraid means I've lost confidence. Give confidence back. Ashamed, I can solve that. You don't have to be ashamed of that. Here's why. Here's a dozen people like you, a dozen clients like you, 200 people like you, 200 websites like yours. There's no reason to be ashamed of this. It's just life. It just happens. Don't let that, just stop you. Confused? Clear confusion. This way you can see what's the nature of the conflict, regardless of what the person in front of you is doing. And the child example shows you that multiple states are in action at a time. Frustration is usually a combination of afraid, confused, and then become mad. That's frustration. It's not just mad alone. Look at the nature of the conflict. Remember, what's the gap? Where have I let someone down? How do I solve it? This is my last hack for you. This is called the cognitive behavior theory of emotions. Because most people go, well, I can't change my emotions. Yes, you can. Well, I can't control my emotions. Yes and no. In that moment when you're at the scary movie and the monster comes up on the screen, you go, ah, it's a monster, it's gonna eat me. And your body reacts. A split second later, the prefrontal cortex says, it's just a movie, it's not happening. And shuts that chemistry down. But you still felt it. Your body remembers it, goes, oh, that was fun. That's why we like horror movies. And roller coasters, all these things. And it also shows there are 3 parts of the brain you're dealing with. The lizard brain in the back is the fastest. It's the one that hits that adrenaline. Oh, time to fight and flight, let's go, boom! Turns it on. Prefrontal cortex is the slowest and the easiest to shut down. The lizard brain never shuts down, which is why we're always feeling emotion. That's that instinctive center. That's the part that has said, man, I had a bad experience with a dog when I was a kid, so instinctively I've learned to be fearful of those moments. That's programmed in an instinctive center. Second level is the mammalian brain. This is where the emotions come from. And if you want to be successful at managing that moment where the client is snarling in your face and you feel the anxiety yourself, you've got to practice these skills. Role play them so that they become instinctive at that level of the brain. Because the prefrontal cortex is the slowest and can be distracted and overwhelmed by the chemistry of fear or anger. Shuts it down. People like Daniel Kahneman have been studying, he wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow. He's isn't he a Duke? Isn't he something? His studies have shown how easy it is to distract the prefrontal cortex. That we think we're exercising well so much of the time, and we're not. A guy named Robert Sapolsky out at Stanford, he's a neuroscience, neurobiologist, zoologist, brilliant guy. I recommend all of his videos, he will blow your mind. He's looking at things saying, you know what, the behavior you have right now is not what you think it is. It is not the free will you think it is. It's a result of how much sleep did you have? What have you had to eat today? Who was the last person you talked to? How happy or mad did that person make you? All of these things set up your body chemistry for what's next, which is the literary quote. What's past is prologue. It's not the free will you think it is. You have this body. And it's going to have these reactions, and it's going to jump to these emotions, these abstractions that I've labeled. Oh, when the body feels like this, I'm afraid. When the body feels like this, I'm happy. When the body feels like this, I'm sad. Those are all abstractions. This model helps you step back from what is the emotional result of what just happened. So first, there's going to be an independent variable, some activating event, something outside of you. You hear something, you see something you have nothing to do with. You may put yourself in a situation to observe it, but it's independent. There's some belief you have, that perceptual frame, the narrative from your brain that says, that's related to me. Again, the same model from the anger cycle, public self, or a public image or self-image, that's related to me. Now I'm involved. This causes an emotive response. When you do not believe there's a relationship between you and the data you have just observed, you do not have an emotive response. You don't have a feeling response. Because it has nothing to do with you. Think of, did anyone else hear the rain last night? Did any of you feel a panic? Like, oh no, we're going to get wet, what do we do? The fire's going to go out. No, because you're inside a building, that rain has nothing to do with me. I experienced no fear, no discomfort, no confusion. But if I were someone who was more nomadic, if I was a homeless person, that rain would mean I've got a lot of problems to solve now. That rain is about me. I'm going to have feelings. That's an example of how it's something specific where you can separate it. So here's where the V comes in. You discount the belief. Independent variable. This is the model, the belief. Dependent variable, result. And you can discount it. Go, okay, is it rational to think that's about me? Is it and when you suddenly catch yourself doing that, that's the moment you go, okay, the person in front of me just said something that's offensive. Did they mean to do that? Or is that my own trigger? They started talking about dogs. And I know that I'm afraid of dogs. That's my trigger. I have to own that. And so, okay, are you trying to scare me or put me in this stuff? Are you aware that I'm scared of dogs? Can you talk about something else? Discounting, discarding. Change beliefs. Some beliefs you can't change. Gravity, my belief in gravity, I can't change. So I'm not going to start believing in levitation or anything like that. Not with a healthy mind. But that also brings up an interesting point. When you look at people with mental illness, reality is perception. This is the same thing. You're no different. You're just more healthy and have more true things in your beliefs and data perceptions than untrue things. So these ABCDs give you the power to change your emotions, check them, pause them. All right, so do we understand some of the noise in the communication process now? In your own head, my own emotions that are triggered that have nothing to do with the conversation. The noise in the words I use versus how the person in front of you understands. Here's a real important point. Words do not have meanings. How many people believe that when I say it? I know, I've been hitting you with sort of a wall of text here. Right, okay, I got one more. Thank you. Words do not have meanings.
How you express those words?
They have usages. So if I say, you're so smart, versus saying, you're so smart, exact same words, totally different meaning. You can see example after example of that. So that means your perception of the words you're hearing may not be what's meant. In the same way, the person listening to you says, oh, you ordered a fish sandwich, here you go, sir, thank you, have a nice day. Didn't hear the words in meaning. So what you allow and understand about yourself, you must allow for the person in front of you as well. And understanding that, and again, a perceptual frame, that they're doing the same thing you're doing at that same moment, that gives that power to you to go, oh, wow, I can really, as you say, unpack it and achieve something better. So looking for the noise and tuning it out and understanding that people will make noise as they hear you. Look for the feedback, ask if they understand you. These are my key takeaways. Active listening, the feedback loop, that relates to the first half, the communication transaction model. Understanding the overlap, understanding, remember those three principles. Second one, 5538-7, yes, that is talking about emotional and feeling communication, but emotions and feelings are ubiquitous. You cannot turn them off without a brain defect, birth defect, or injury. And there have been studies of people who've had this, and they're very fascinating. Managing the gap between expectations and reality is hack number 3. That is understanding the origin of conflict. When reality does not match expectations, you manage the gap. Focus on that will help a lot to be ahead of problems when you're aware there's a gap at all. Sometimes a client will be going, oh, okay, I heard that, and I was disappointed, but I didn't say anything. I just made a little tick. And when I did, I took something out of your idiosyncrasy account. And that's the client who, out of nowhere, out of the clear blue sky, just explodes at you like, whoa, I didn't know there was a problem here. But you had clues when you didn't meet expectations and you told them this is fun, that is fun, that potentially that was there and wanted to avoid that. The last one, listen to the nature of conflict to understand what the issues are to address. Happy, sad, mad, afraid, shamed, confused. What was the gap between expectations and reality? Can you use your ABCDs to adjust the nature of conflict? Yours, internally, theirs. It's very difficult. I would caution you to say, oh, you're responding that way because you believe blah, blah, blah. That belief just isn't right. You're just totally flat. I promise. That's not going to get you very far. Because there are 4 levels of conversation. First level is cliche. How are you today? Fine, thanks. Well, actually, my big toe hurts. I'm a little jet lagged. That's not the appropriate answer. When someone asks how are you doing today, they're asking, do you know the rules? You say, yes, I know the rules. That's all that is. It's an us versus them confirmation. Are you one of us or are you one of them? Do you know the answer to how are you doing today? Fine, thanks. Or no habla inglés. I don't know the rules. That's what you're doing. And this is a real hazard when you say, I need this done by 10 o'clock. You understand? Yeah, I can do that. You got a cliche answer. Level 2 is facts. Level 3 is feelings. Level 4 is beliefs. That's why it's very difficult to change someone else's beliefs. You best work on your own. Then, where was I?
Around the 4 levels of communication.
Thank you. Be aware of that cliche answer and ask for more, ask for a better answer. When your developer says that, tell them, explain to them. So here we are at the end of the presentation. I want to give you a quick description of how you'll see these hacks and these failures, which are why I've highlighted them, in your everyday job. So I make a ticket that says, John, you're my developer. I need this done, blah, 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 blah. And you write back to me and say, yes. Okay. Then the due date comes. It's not the right color. And now I'm experiencing conflict. What happened? One, I didn't manage the message process. I didn't make sure he understood exactly. But by giving him that message, I walked away with a belief that it was going to be right. Didn't manage the gap. Then I had this belief that it's going to be right, it's going to be delivered on time, and it's not. Now I have an emotive reaction. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. It's that easy. These are the things that produce the most noise in the work we do as project managers, developers, designers, all of it. These 4 intersections. And after working in the industry for a while, after being at camp for a while, I thought, let me develop a talk to address these things, to help highlight them, bring them up to the present tense and the level of conversation. I have just given you a wall of text. Any questions? I like this little quote by Nietzsche because it helps you remember some of this. It's like when you look at something and go, wow, they are crazy. When you hear yourself do that, put a pin in that little flag and say, why are they crazy? Because it's something I believe. I believe they're crazy because they're dancing to their music. Is that true? Or do I not have all the data? Realize there's a possibility I don't. And there's a possibility they're crazy. But leaving that room for yourself and the person in front of you will enrich your communication and stop the us versus them where you go, okay, they just don't want to talk about it, you cut it off. That's why you look for those decaying flags in the culture of your office and stop them, because it will arrive at that point in the neighborhood. That's my email. Please send me a question, follow up. My slides are posted. And thank you so much. I'm trying to be selected at SpeakCon next year, so if you want to give me a vote or whatever, bribes, I appreciate it. Thank you all very much for your attention.